because everything that we're doing, the things that we're eating, the cars that we're driving, the medicines that we're having, all these things or all these luxuries that people on land are enjoying are made possible by people who work on the ships. It's really hard to be on the sea. Like no one should be, on the water. Like the life on land is really better. For me, that was like life changing. I feel like that's like a life and death situation because really, I feel like I'm gonna die.
Joar Songcuya is a self-taught painter, seafarer, and marine engineer who has spent nearly a decade sailing the world aboard commercial ships before becoming a full-time artist. I wanted to start by asking you what started you on your artist journey.
Growing up in a farm by the river, I never really thought about like, pursuing art. Like this dream of becoming an artist. It's just growing up surrounded by nature made me have shaping me on how I see the world, like I imagine the world. But I did not pursue an art degree when I went to college. So I pursued an entirely different career.
And you started your career as a marine engineer and a seafarer.
I was left with no choice but to dive into what's available. And there's this scholarship from Norway, the marine engineering. And for me, that was a very good option. And I wanted to travel the world. And for me, becoming a marine engineer or a seafarer will give me the chance to travel the world.
You go on to spend 10 years in on a commercial ship sailing the world. What is that like? What is it first like when you set off for your voyage?
Honestly, it was really tough in there. Like, it's really hard to be on the sea. Like, no one should be, on the water. The life on land is really better than being on the sea. But, I don't have any choice. I learned to love the profession. I learned to appreciate the perks or the good stuff that I managed to get from that career. Yes, I traveled the world, but every single day of your life being on the ship, being away from the land is really hard. Like anything could happen. Yeah, it's really pretty tough.
How would you describe that? Like, what would a day look like when you're out on the water?
It's crazy. Like every part of you is shaking. You could really literally feel you're on the water. You're not stable. Like the ship is moving. But I kind of grew with it. I managed to stabilize my body. Like my body kind of adjusted with this life. And it's when I look back, wow, I think I'm brave enough to last that long. On my first year, second year, I really wanted to quit shipping, but I don't have a choice. Like no one's gonna support the family. And my grandmother who raised us, who took care of us, started to get sick. So I really doesn't have a choice.
And as a marine engineer, is it your job to keep things running, or what was the actual job involving?
My department is like on the belly of the ships. So I cannot see the sea. So I'm like imprisoned. I'm on the belly of the ship. There's no windows in there. But of course there are times that you can walk few stories and then go outside of the deck to, have fresh air, see the water. But my department is pretty tough as well, like machineries, running machineries, steam, smell of fuel, all the other chemicals in there. So every part of your body is really stimulated. Your smell, your sight, your body vibrating with the machinery.
There's a time where you get used to it, or there's a time where you grew to enjoy your time.
Yeah, I enjoyed it somehow, but at the same time, that's where art came into the picture. Like every day, I will spend like 8 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours. If there are emergency, sometimes you cannot sleep the entire night. But then I started to have like a ritual or a habit of like, I will go to my cabin to end the day and then I will start making art, like just making drawings.
How did it develop? You start with these drawings and start drawing, I guess, the places you visit and the sea and the things around you. And then you start to teach yourself different techniques, or how does that develop?
I literally drew anything. I can even like I have paintings and drawings of flowers or whatever is coming into my brain. Like, it's very intuitive. Like when you're on the sea, you kind of imagine nature, like the whatever comes into my mind, animals. I did all these images until I developed this body of work that is really connected the savoring to labor, whatever. And with technique, I started to use pencil, paper until such time that I became familiar with the technique, with the medium on my 6th year or 7th year when every time when I'm in Manila, when I'm on vacation, I would spend a few amount of time going into some galleries in Manila, connecting with local artists, like watching how they do things. Like that's how I learned art. That's how I learned the techniques.
When did you know you wanted to go full time into art?
So during the pandemic was really the push, and I was still on the ship. I'm in Africa, and my ship is going to Spain, to Europe. I got appendicitis, so for like 2 weeks, I was like bedridden on the ship, and for me, that was like life changing. I feel like that's like a life and death situation because really, I feel like I'm gonna die. And for me, I mean, like, I grew up very religious, but at that point in time, being at sea with this sickness, feeling so bad, I kind of pray to the universe. Like, if you will give me another chance to leave, I'm gonna pursue what I have to do. So after 2 weeks, we arrived in Spain. I had the emergency surgery in Algeciras. And then in Manila, after 2 weeks, the Philippines was locked down. The world stopped, but for me, it was the start of something new, a new career.
What was it like with those first exhibitions? Were you nervous?
Uh, I'm very insecure actually. Like, like I can hear not really criticism, but feedback that some of my works are not really refined or polished, or I really need to work on the imagery. But what's comforting at some point is I think I have the story to tell. Like, no one have done art like this. Like there are like millions of Filipino seafarers scattered around the world, and there are like, you know, no one really highlighted the plight of seafarers or Filipino seafarers. So that's one thing that I'm trying to hold on. Like, I feel like, okay, I have something to learn or to progress as an artist technically or the medium or something like that. But for me, I held into the story. Going to the art scene in the Philippines is really hard. It's very challenging, but holding on into something, into the story, makes it bearable, I guess.
A lot of your projects have themes that relate to the sea and I guess your voyages to some extent. Uh, some exhibitions you've been in are about the pilgrimage or the shorelines of different countries. You have one called "The Sea Is Not a Quiet Place," which I think is a great name. What are you trying to get at with all of your themes that you've been drawing out of your work and working towards?
Spending like 10 years of my life in the sea is I feel like a very long time. And I feel like my body as a laborer, have stored so much experiences, and I can't stop painting the oceans. Like when I sleep, when I walk, when I think about things, I feel that the water took so much from me, but at the same time, I learned so much from the water. And though I wanted to, kind of progress or like paint other images, but the sea is really strong. It's really intense. It's really a part of me. And that's why all my exhibitions are like centered on my personal narrative or or the experiences that I have.
I wonder, what does the sea mean to you now? Like, has your view of it changed over time?
For me, the sea is another world. It's another planet. It's another planet. Uh, it's hauntingly beautiful. Like I grew older, loving and hating the sea. It's like a love-hate relationship. It's really dangerous. Anything, any minute, anything could happen. But at the same time, it's really strangely beautiful. Like that isolation, that distance from the land. It's very beautiful to open, to see a very, like the vast ocean, just the light, like it looking at the space, it's very beautiful. But in this vastness, in this ocean, that's where you could hear the loudest screams. I mean, introspection. Like it will really force you to think about life, about your purpose, about how little you are, how little humans are. That will humble you. That will really humble you.
But I mean, I was also interested in what your best memories were from your voyages.
Yeah, going to different countries, seeing the other lands, seeing other culture, seeing other people. That's really beautiful. Like that will really open your eyes to the world. Like, oh, this connection to my country. And at the same time, that's disconnection. I mean, traveling is really beautiful. Traveling the world, like seeing other places, meeting other places. That's the best memories, taking photos or maybe just eating an ice cream in a foreign town or just like walking on the port. Like imagine being on the ship, let's say 6 months or 3 months long. Like you're on the water and you were not able to go into the port. That feeling alone of having your feet landing on the land, whatever country it is, whatever port it is already a very beautiful gift for a seafarer. Like, oh wow, I survived another voyage or another rotation. Like, there's a time that I even kissed the ground. From I don't know, it was somewhere in the Middle East or yeah, because I had like a very tough voyage, so it feels like reconnecting with the land is really beautiful.
I also wanted to ask you about Filipino culture because Filipinos are famously there are a lot of seafarers that are from the Philippines.
Culture. Like that's a very, I don't know, complex or I don't know, because I myself, I am questioning what is a Filipino culture. Like we are really are a very mixed country. I mean, like our beliefs are really influenced by the other countries. Like the Philippines was colonized for over 300 years by Spain, America, Japan. So these countries have I mean, left a very strong impression and influence in our own culture. But at the same time, I think because we are surrounded by different islands, the Philippines is an archipelago, 1,000 islands. Um, yes, I think that one culture that is like embedded in the DNA of every Filipino. We like to travel. We are like boat people, like sea people.
And so you arrive back in the Philippines and you sort of transition to this full-time artist role. Uh, Does this change your creative process?
Yeah, going back to the Philippines really changed my perspective and on how I look at art. And and really it's just 4 years, but I feel like I feel like I've expanded so much in ways that I've never imagined. Like I worked with other people, I did residencies, I consume books, anything that's connected to art making. And especially I'm a seeker. I'm from a seafaring background. I The art world is not in my vocabulary. Like how to speak like an artist, how to think like an artist. So I'm basically like every part of me is just consuming every information, every experiences on that. And that's a lot to process. I feel like, there's one point last year that I was like thinking, oh my God, I feel like I'm going crazy. Why did I pursue art making? Like, it's literally a different kind of an ocean. It has its own set of waves and storms and deep territories. And for me, I feel like, oh, am I doomed? Like, if I have a choice, maybe I should have just like have a typical job. I just want to be like, a normal person. Because for me, pursuing art takes so much responsibility and it will really make you think a lot. Like, but it's really tough. Like, harder than the oceans that I work with. Like, being a seaman is way, okay, it's hard. It has dangers of its own, but really pursuing this art career is way more challenging.
How would you describe?
One thing is, the Philippines. I mean, if you look at the art market, okay, we're talking about the art market. I mean, the art world or the art scene in the Philippines, I feel is a little bit just starting, like compared to Taiwan, Singapore, Japan, or other countries. They're way more. How do I say? Like, there's so many ways to survive as an artist, and being in the Philippines is really hard. Like people here are struggling to make a living, and why did I pursue this art career? Like, not every day or not every month you will sell artworks. And for me, the right people just arrived. Like recently, I had an institutional show in Dubai in a museum, and then by March, I'll be going to Berlin to an institutional exhibition as well, and they're curated by very good curators.
You are starting to have these more international exhibitions, and what's that been like? What's the process been like? Do you find it exciting to be shown in other countries as well?
I mean, like doing shows outside the Philippines made me realize that there are other places who are very curious about of the stories that I am trying to depict in my work. Like, most people would prefer a beautiful painting, a seascape painting, which is not problematic, right? Like people would love or would prefer something beautiful to put in their sofa or on their beautiful walls. And for me, that's also one thing that assured me that where I am going or the stories that I wanted to tell has its own spaces, and there will be spaces who is willing to kind of accommodate you or give you a platform. And yes, this international shows made me excited about. Like, I'm currently working on another series of drawings that also tells about the plight of Filipino seafarers. I didn't want it. I don't want to be very political, but for me, I mean, like, I just wanted to paint my personal stories. But surprisingly, this personal narrative or a, an artist's personal story somehow could be political as well.
I mean, you do often include uh, seafarers in some of your paintings. Um, is that a choice you've made to try and represent that lifestyle? And
I feel like they're very important. Like when we talk about the sea, I started with painting seascapes. I feel that the seafarers or these people working on ships needs to be painted. Their stories need to be shared because everything that we're doing, the things that we're eating, the cars that we're driving, the medicines that we're having, all these things or all these luxuries that people on land are enjoying are made possible by people who work on the ships. Everything is made possible through ships. So for me, these people who are working, suffering inside the ship, their stories are very important and they needed to be seen and they needed to be represented. They needed to be painted.
one question that I think is interesting to ask you in your position is if you have tips for younger artists or people who are just starting out.
Wow, I thought this is a very simple question, but at the same time, I'm kind of like posting myself. Becoming an artist is really a vocation. For me, it is a vocation. Once you signed up to be an artist, whatever medium may it be, uh, how do you say, sculpture, painting, performance, even writing, any creative practice or career or pursuing art would really demand you to be true to yourself. Art will demand you to question yourself. The extension of yourself may it be about your community, about your country, about yourself. So for me, the advice that I can give is if you're willing to be honest, if you're willing to be true, if you are willing to be useful, to add use to the humanity, art will demand you these things. And technically, you don't have to push yourself. I realize that my experiences have played a very big part on my progress as an artist. And for me, when if I pursued art immediately without having these experiences, or if I did not go to the ship to work as a seaman, I think I would not paint these images.
In the other direction, do you have artists that have inspired you or people you look up to?
Oh, there's so many artists that inspired me. It also changed. Like every year, I have a different set of favorites, but I'm leaning into artists who are minorities, and at the same time, they say black artists, uh, women of color, queer artists. I'm looking to artists with challenging stories. I feel like they need to be represented.
What keeps you optimistic or positive?
It's really hard to be positive with what's happening in the world right now, right? There's so much going on here. And for me, I like the word, I always love the word comforted. But yeah, I am comforted by the idea that through art, we can find a way to heal, to have a sense of hope, to heal, and to create a better tomorrow. So for me, art making is like a way of survival. And for me, surviving is already one thing that will make me feel positive about. I mean, like, yeah, you're living, you're making art. So that makes me optimistic. This makes me think, huh? I'm thinking now, huh? Yeah.
Well, the only thing left to say is thanks for having the conversation.